Hey guys, Trapper Tony here, and we've just arrived on site to one of our commercial clients' location. Here we have an active skunk burrow. They've actually dug underneath the front entrance concrete slab. Now skunks will do this because it's middle of summer here. It's a perfect environment where they can undermine the soil, creating a nice little void or cavity there to stay during the day. As the sun beats down on that concrete slab, it's nice and cool and damp underneath there. Perfect environment to keep them nice and tidy, comfy, and cozy. Now follow me back here and we'll go check out the skunk den. So we just spoke to our commercial client here to get an understanding of what they're experiencing, what they saw, what they noticed. I mean, it's pretty obvious to us where the skunk has kind of undermined underneath this concrete slab. We've identified the entry point. This will be critical for once we do the excavation of the soil. We'll be installing the galvanized steel mesh deep down across the face of the concrete and also across the soil itself. So if the animal decides to come across the top, comes into contact with the mesh, tries to burrow down, comes into contact with the mesh as well. Over the entry point, we'll mark this area for future use. This is where we will be installing the one-way door. Now we're just going to give you a little overview of the tools associated to a job when dealing with animals burrowing under structures, sheds, decks, or dwellings. This would be the tools and the safety equipment associated to a trenching or ground exclusion job. Mainly is our leather gloves. This is going to protect us from the sharp edges of the mesh when we decide to cut and install the desired length and height. Mainly, we will be using the shovel here. This is that little spade to undermine the soil around the area in question. We want to get deep enough so that the skunks can't burrow underneath the mesh, and also wide enough across to prevent that re-entry. Once we've kind of dug out the soil, we can move to the mesh, measure the length with our measuring tape, width required for the install. We'll bend that mesh the shape of an L to go against the structure as well as lower into the soil. And here we are dealing with a concrete slab. So we'll utilize an SDS hammer drill to drill our pilot guides, our holes for our 1/4 inch conical anchors, which would be these guys here. It's a 1/4 inch conical anchor that will get hammered into place with our hammer after we have drilled the pilot hole. Followed by that, the mesh, and then installed with the hardware. See our 1/4 inch fender washer and screw installed with the drill itself. Further to that, we have our mesh cutters here to properly cut the seal required for install. And eventually the installation of the one-way door for exclusion. Always make sure we're going to be working hard here. Our heart rate's going to get pumped up. We always want to make sure that we stay hydrated. So this is the #1 tool associated to a trench or burrowing animal service. Okay guys, let's dig into the service, literally. First, we're going to start by marking our entry point, just because once we undermine the soil, we want to make sure we place the one-way door in the exact location the animal is typically using. This eases with the process, allows those animals to vacate. There's no disruption in their course of action. First, let's start by marking our entry point. Once we undermine the soil along here, we'll install the mesh with the one-way door right over that burrow. Now, this process of undermining the soil here is what we call trenching. So we're going to dig along the foundation of the concrete slab so that we can get the mesh deep enough and far enough across to prevent re-entry. So if you ever heard anybody talk about trenching, this is exactly what we're talking about. the prep before the mesh installation. Okay, so now we have our site prepared. We want to go deep enough till we hit solid clay or solid soil. First we went through the topsoil, then a layer of sand. Now we're into nice hard clay. So we know we can lay our mesh across the bottom there and up across the slab here for the seal installation. Now we believe this client has had issues with skunks in the past. As we try to extend our trench here, we're coming into concrete, so it looks like they may have done some preventative services or DIY services in the past, but in any sense we will still install the mesh there and make this look uniform, tidy and neat with the one-way door installation. So our site is prepared. Now all we have to do is take some measurements, cut some mesh, install the mesh with the one-way door. So now that we know the measurements required for our seal installation, we're going to come cut mesh right off the roll here. What's nice about this mesh, it's PVC dipped in a black coating, has a more cosmetic appealing look to it. It's also 1 inch by 1 inch. So when we're taking measurements with our measuring tape, it's easy to reference 8 by 8, 16 by 16. We'll cut the squares according to the measurement that we've taken. So as described, we're going to be installing the mesh in that shape of an L. You're going to want a nice flat edge where we can bend a 90-degree angle according to the measurements we've taken. So we have about 12 inches deep that we need to go and 4 to 6 inches across. Find that line and bend our 90. Now this does look like it's nice and soft, malleable mesh. However, it is 100% wildlife proof. Nothing's going to get through this mesh. So now that we've prepared the area by trenching out the soil, we've cut our mesh to length, put our bend in. We're going to test fit the mesh itself and find where we're going to install the one-way door according to the mark that we originally placed. So here you can see the mesh is across the surface of the slab. It's down and across deep enough to where we hit clay down there, harder soil. And with our marking here, we know exactly where we want to place this one-way door. So as the door opens, we actually install these upside down. So as the door opens, the animal can vacate right through. So we'll test fit this, take a mark, and install the door. We have our door secured to the mesh seal. It's critical that on the back side we actually remove the mesh. So we'll cut out the area around the plexiglass. Now this plexiglass will allow any light to illuminate through. It's also right over top of the main entry point that the animals are used to using. So in this case, it will be now their final exit point as we exclude them from the area in question. So as the skunk goes to leave, door will open, it's excluded to the exterior. So now that we have our final location figured out for the installation of the seal and the one-way door, we have to fashion this mesh to the concrete slab itself. So we're going to drill some pilot holes into the concrete, put in our conical anchors with the hammer, follow it up with the screw and washer installation through the mesh into the anchor, preventing any pulling or tearing of the mesh itself. So now that we have the seal installed along the top, it's secure from any prying or pulling all the way. We are now going to backfill the soil, which will ultimately keep the lower portion or that L bend shape of mesh installed. So we'll just simply take the soil, place it back here. We made sure our lines are below the soil surface line to make a nice clean cosmetic look for the final seal. Now we're going to keep in mind that we want to keep soil away from the front of the door, just to ensure nothing blocks the animals from vacating. We don't want to trap them inside. We want them to be able to use and access the one-way door here. So now that we have our seal and one-way door installed, we're going to pack up our tools, tidy up the area, and leave this for a minimum 7 days. We'll communicate with the customer here. They'll monitor the site. If there's any digging or burrowing or any damage associated to any area with this animal in particular, we will come back. Now, after that 7-day period, if we don't hear from the customer in regards to any new activity, we will return for the door removal and the final seal. Okay, so we've kind of tidied up our site here, and this is just for now. All that soil will be replaced once we do the final seal and door removal. Before we leave, we just want to make sure there's nothing obstructing the door or the springs themselves down below. So as you can see here, there's a little bit of soil in our way. We'll just relocate that quickly. We don't want to trap the animal inside. We want to give the animal the opportunity to vacate, which will be typically 24 to 48 hours. So what we can do is we can get our finger in there, manipulate the door, and verify that the door is functioning. So the animal will come out hopefully tonight, best case tomorrow, vacate through the door, and it should close on itself, excluding it to the exterior. It's been about 7 days, and we haven't heard from the customer in regards to any new activity or movement with the one-way door installation. So we're here to take the door off and place the final seal, preventing these animals from burrowing underneath this slab ever again.